9 years later, the families of the Lily Mine tragedy continue to fight for closure and justice, waiting for their loved ones' remains to be retrieved so they can be laid to rest. The families have been given renewed hope with the promise that recovery efforts will finally get underway, but still no action has been taken. For more, we are joined by ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba. Mr. Mashaba, thank you so much for joining us this evening. To think that next year it will be a decade since this tragedy occurred at the Lily Mine. You have been sounding the alarm even prior to your political party's existence. What do you make of these renewed calls that there could be a glimmer of hope?
Well, Masa, this is one of the most painful chapter of our democratic dispensation. In 1994, when we voted the ANC into power, 2 years later, passing a constitution with the Bill of Rights and establishing Chapter 9 institutions to ensure that the rights of South Africans cannot really be violated any longer. Unfortunately, ANC has really demonstrated that to be black and poor in this country, unfortunately, the past, the apartheid past of the mining industry, it's here haunting us. Because what is said about it is, if you look at what the ANC government did after 1994, taking the rights of the minerals taking ownership to the state, awarding them to companies that can respect the human rights. Unfortunately, Masa, what has happened because of this triple BEE, a lot of ANC cadres became owners of this mine or shareholders. And unfortunately, they've demonstrated that the continuation of the exploitation and insensitivity of poor blacks is still continuing. It'll be 10 years on the 5th of February next year when that container collapsed. And the container did not collapse because it was an accident. It was an accident bound to happen. And what is actually even more painful about it is that it had to really take me to expose the lie of our government when they lied to the family that this container cannot really be retrieved. And right now, they are in contempt of court orders. They've hijacked and captured our entire criminal justice system. They've captured our Chapter 9 institutions, including the South African Human Rights Commission, who cannot even acknowledge a single letter of asking for their intervention, because unfortunately our three fellow South Africans who were killed and murdered by this activity are not illegal foreigners, because it looks like the Chapter 9 institutions like the South African Human Rights Commission, the only time they come to the party, that's when an illegal person does something wrong, that's when they come in.
Mr. Mashaba, you've been in very close contact with those families. Those families have now been camping outside and near the Lily Mine as of for years now. Do you have any reflection or responses from them when it comes to these renewed efforts? You know, I know that the family spokesperson who's done an array of interviews, Mr. Herman Mashaba, has said the families are feeling pretty cautious about this announcement.
Look, one thing, Masa, I've given the family the commitment, and I'm giving the commitment to you and people of South Africa. For as long as Herman Mashaba is alive, even beyond my passing, my family will never rest until that container is retrieved, because we have proven beyond any reasonable doubt that that container can be retrieved. We've already spent over 4 million rands in legal costs to expose the lie of our government when they said the container cannot be retrieved. The only thing that really pains me and hurt me is because I'm unable to convince the families to go back home, to allow us to deal with this matter when they are continuing with their normal life. And unfortunately, I'm unable to. So as you are aware, last Tuesday, I took our members of parliament, because they are now dealing with this matter at the parliamentary level. But I wanted them to actually go and meet the family, go and look at their living conditions. What you will see in the coming weeks or so, where our members of parliament are going to request parliamentary debate on the Lily Mine matter, because it looks like the only option left to us right now is to go to international courts, which will really be an embarrassment for my country and your country. And is it really necessary when that container can really be retrieved? We have technical advice and specs on how that container can be retrieved, and we're trying to really get government to ensure that the process can be done. And what is actually quite sad about it is because it is not just really the question of the three trapped miners. It is because of depriving just over 1,000 people of Barberton employment opportunities, because the only way you can retrieve that container, you've got to open a new shaft, because you can't go straight to the container. You've got to open a new shaft. And opening the new shaft, there's a lot of gold from what the technical people are saying. So you need the government to award the mining rights to a mining company, and there are lots of them who are willing to take the responsibility to retrieve that container, but they need to really be given the right to open a new shaft. And while they're going for the container, they will create a minimum of 1,000 employment opportunities. As you are aware of the situation in our country as far as employment is concerned. So that's something that it is bizarre. We find it really difficult as fellow human beings, as to why this government can be so inhuman, can be so evil, to refuse to retrieve the container. Secondly, provide a minimum of 1,000 employment opportunities in a country where we have the highest sustainable unemployment rate in the world.
As part of your efforts as well to try and bring some attention to this by government and also to the president as well, you've also written an open letter to the president, Ramaphosa, and in that open letter, you ended off by saying, is Ubuntu really dead in our country? If not, what will you do? Has the president responded to this open letter of yours and other previous communications that you have sent through? And if not, while you're mentioning the international court option as well, while you're saying it wouldn't be the best case scenario, but it's something you're considering, if you don't get a response from the president and it seems there is no movement to retrieve these bodies as well, how strong of a consideration is it for you to approach international courts?
Well, unfortunately, Masa, if not given an opportunity, it'll be the only option left. But you can imagine the implications and the repercussions for all of us as South Africans in terms of our standing in the international community. You know, South Africa after 1994, with Nelson Mandela taking over, how South Africa was revered as a country with a constitution that respects human rights. Unfortunately, the ANC of today has demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt that human rights is something that it's in our constitution, but it's not even worth the paper it's written on, more especially if you are black and poor.
And just finally, who do you hold accountable, not one entity or individual? Clearly, there are various members at play here, but who should be held accountable at this point? If you were to take it, for instance, to the international court, which names are you putting in there?
Well, I'm sure, Masha, you're aware in October 2023, the Mbombela Magistrate Court came out with a judgment for the National Prosecuting Authority to come out with criminal prosecution against, firstly, the owners of the mine. Secondly, senior members of the Department of Minerals and Energy for complicit, because they've been complicit to those. Thirdly, some members of the Barberton Police Station, because these three parties have been responsible for the families to really suffer now close to 10 years. So obviously, if we take it to the international courts. These are the three people who are fortunate enough. They've already there's already a court judgment to prosecute them criminally. Unfortunately, the National Prosecuting Authority under the current head, Advocate Batoyi, she's literally also not interested. We've brought the family. We even went to her office. I written, I don't know how many letters. I've written so many letters to the South African Human Rights Commission. And as you are aware, yes, the last letter I wrote, open letter to Cyril Ramaphosa. They are all not interested. And you ask yourself, but why? There's some giving you reasons that the retrieval of that container has got massive economic benefits for the country, because you need a company, and companies are interested in that mine. You need to open a new shaft, create immediately over 1,000 jobs. But President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC, and in fact, it looks like the entire parliament is not interested, even including labor unions. The labor unions in this country, they've deserted employees. You are only good to them for as long as you are employed. As soon as you lose your job, they're no longer interested, which is a really very sad state of affairs. This is not what we voted for in 1994, but I don't really lose hope. If, as South Africans, we could defeat the evil system of apartheid, I don't really see the reason why we cannot remove the ANC from government and usher in a government that can be caring, bring in ethical leaders that can have a social conscience as part of their DNA.
Herman Mashaba, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is the leader of ActionSA, Herman Mashaba, just talking to us about that Lily Mine tragedy that occurred 9 years ago.